Hello and welcome. My name is Nicole Huntington and I'm here today to introduce you to my graduate project. My graduate project is titled Doing History Rather Than Simply Learning History. Before I get into the meat and potatoes of what my project is all about, I want you to take a second and think about how you were exposed to social studies when you were in high school. I can tell you from personal experience, I hated it. My teacher was awful. He was boring. Oftentimes, we listened to him lecture for 40 straight minutes while we took notes, or at least tried to. When we weren't listening to him lecture, we were reading out of a textbook. And honestly, the textbooks back then were no better than they are today. They're hard to navigate, the language is confusing, and many times, a lot of the important themes and details that we really need to learn are not included. With that said, I am exploring a new way in which to teach social studies. The theory is that with project-based learning, essentially an initiative by which the students guide their own learning, students will be more motivated, have higher levels of engagement in the classroom, and end up having higher levels of achievement in their overall test scoring. The theory pretty much states that with an inquiry-based model where the students actually do much of the exploration on their own, they are drawn into higher levels of thinking and then will be able to create projects, presentations, and documents by which they can actually share their learning. I was kind of brought up to speed on project-based learning during my student teaching. I was very fortunate to have a mentor teacher, especially in the 7th and 8th grade, that did a lot of projects with his students. The one thing that he asked of me is that I followed the same model. He did not want me using a textbook. He did not want me lecturing for 40 straight minutes. He wanted the students to really take ownership of their learning, and that's what they did. During my student teaching experience, I had students actually do document quests to examine the Bill of Rights. For World War I, we used a lot of media to actually hit home the point of how awful the conditions were during trench warfare. We wrote letters home. We had writing assignments. We actually had students go through and research, create presentations, and then instruct the class on legislation that came out as a result of the war and the war effort. As I went through my actual educational journey, I had several professors, especially in the social studies department, that actually promote the idea of project-based learning. One of my professors actually wrote a book. I know it's backward on your screen, but Teaching History Through Big Ideas. And what she says is that we should have students more engaged, and in order to get them there, they should create their own question. So now think again to that model of social studies when you were in school and your teacher that maybe taught out of the textbook. How awesome would it be if you walked into a classroom and your professor or your teacher actually said, okay, I'm going to say World War I, tell me what you can think of it. And actually have the students brainstorm what they already know. And then the teacher asks, okay, what do you want to know about World War I? And have the students actually come up with questions like, deeper than war, why are we fighting it? Or what's the purpose? Or what caused it? We want students to actually look into the deeper aspects of things. What can we learn from World War I? We don't want them to just walk away knowing that it was the result of multiple conflicts that escalated, but we really want them to be able to dissect all of the specific nuances that led up to the war, kept the war raging, and ultimately changed the face of the world as we know it today. Within my project, my proposal essentially would say that we would have a couple of different groups of students, and one group would be taught through project-based learning. One group would be taught in a traditional method. The goal at the end would be that the project-based group would show higher levels of achievement, higher levels of motivation and engagement, and overall have a new outlook on their social studies education. This is no easy task, of course. Of all of the research that I have done so far, I know I have only hit the tip of the iceberg. At this point in time, most of the research studies indicate that additional research needs to take place. Now, if you are in a true project-based learning classroom, there is going to be a very, very small amount of teacher-led instruction. The vast majority of that instruction is going to be student-centered by research, exploration, activities, and projects. Having a student create a project is a great way for them to actually take any of the information that they read, that they watch, that they hear, and put that back into their own words, their own illustrations. A great project that you can do with your students, I'm going to go back to World War I, is to have them actually do an illustrated notebook for the causes of the war. If you can take a theory like nationalism and have a student define it and then draw an illustration showing what nationalism really is, that's awesome. That really tells you that that student fully understands that idea, knows what it is, how it works, and how it's contributing to essentially the cause of the war. Who wouldn't want their students to have that experience in the classroom? Lastly, if you take anything away from this, I'm hoping that you can take away the benefit of project-based instruction. I can tell you that I've seen it in action in some classrooms, and it's really quite incredible. You know, when you can walk into a classroom and see 20 students actively engaged in exploring things on their own, creating projects, illustrations, writing, and so on. One, the collaboration is amazing. Two, the evidence of deeper learning and higher level thinking is there in their writing. And three, the overall satisfaction and excitement that kids have when they show up to that classroom is incredible. Nobody wants to be the teacher whose class is boring, nobody can stand them, and all the students show up just trying to get through the day. They all want to be able to go to a classroom where they're excited and they have fun. Lastly, project-based learning is not limited to just the social studies. This is something that will benefit kids grades K through 12 in any of the content areas. Math and science are already proven successes when it comes to project-based learning. I hope you enjoyed this video. I urge you to take a look at the lesson and unit plans on my WordPress page, and hopefully you might be able to get some great ideas that you can use in your classroom. Have fun!